All right, so I obviously have to start by giving you a hard time about your schedule, just based on the difficulty of
Yeah,
getting this set up. How often does your schedule change?
my schedule changes every morning based on the surf, basically. I mean, as you've seen, and yeah, I'm sorry for that. As you've seen, though, the surf's unpredictable, and my life is based around what the waves are doing, and that sounds like some burnout thing from the 70s or something, but it's really true. I mean, I basically get up and live my life according to what the surf's doing. So, we've.
I mean, you could get up, one morning in Hawaii and see the weather's such in Australia where you hop on a plane that day and fly to Australia? Something like that dramatic?
Had we not had this interview lined up for today, I would have done that the other day.
Really?
Yeah. The waves were really good in Hawaii. It was giant all week last week. We held that Eddie Aikau event. And then I probably would have gotten on a flight the day after that and chased this swell. There was a big cyclone that hit Fiji and then moved down between Fiji and New Zealand, and there was great surf in Australia all week. That's kind of how it goes.
Does that eat you up that you aren't there right now?
No, it's all right. This swell disappeared, and actually all the footage I saw was amazing, but it was so crowded that I probably would have been there frustrated anyways. There was literally hundreds of people in the water. Everyone knew about the swell. But that being said, there's always some sort of secrets around where there's fewer people somewhere and you can go have fun at some other spot.
And how do you go about finding those places?
Oh, you just know about them or you hear about them or, you just think a little differently. I mean, generally most people will know where the best spot is and where the waves can be sort of happening. But, if you want to lower your standards a little bit or take a risk somewhere else that doesn't get good very often, you can always look for something else and find something unique.
How often do you travel?
I pretty much just permanently travel. People ask me where I live, I say in a suitcase, but I mean, I have a home in Australia, I have a home in Florida, I have a home in Hawaii, and I have a place here in California that I stay at. So I actually have two places in California I stay at. So I'm just sort of set up, and every other place I go, I have friends that have homes, and I stay with them usually.
Does the travel ever get old?
Yeah, the travel gets old.
I mean, after 32 years, you mentioned of doing it.
Yeah. There's a certain monotony to traveling and competing at the same places every year, but I think the excitement of travel never disappears. I mean, I always said if I wasn't a surfer, I'd probably get a job like doing body work or being a chef or something I could get up and move and go and check out different places in the world.
Where are your favorite places now to travel to?
Probably, I always say Fiji's my favorite place because it just is. The waves are great. The people are super nice. It's warm. I mean, I can't really find anything about Fiji I don't like or love. And unfortunately, they got hit by a giant cyclone the other day, and there was 26 people killed or something like that. But the area I go to, no one was injured. But yeah, it's just a beautiful country and literally the nicest people on earth.
I understand you're known to show up at the airport like minutes before an international flight will take off.
Yeah, I am. I actually get really.
There've been some close calls with your agent Terry.
Oh, I miss flights pretty often, but.
Oh, you really do?
Yeah, I miss some flights. We missed one the other day, but it was an inter-island flight in Hawaii, and there was another one half an hour later. But.
What's the worst one you've missed?
No, the worst one. Remember, there was one I got to going to Chile, and I don't know how they let me on the flight, but
from where were you flying out of?
We were flying from LA to Chile, and a friend of mine was on the flight, and we were in Brentwood, and we left Brentwood 2 hours before the flight. And it's usually, if there's no traffic, it's like a 20-minute drive, and it took us an hour and 45 minutes. Got there 15 minutes before the flight was supposed to take off, and the manager of the flight is like, "Oh, no problem, no problem." But I don't know, the guy surfed or something, the manager, and we pulled up at the curb. I think it was 16 minutes till takeoff at International. And I walked in and I was like stressing out. And the guy's like, no, it's okay. No problem, we'll get you on. He's just like super cool Latin guy.
Explain why you travel and pack a heavy water filtration system. I
occasionally will carry I have this suitcase full of a filtration system for water that I do take. Just to know I'm getting clean water wherever I go. You might be in Brazil one week and then South Africa the next week or whatever, and just to kind of have a consistency in your water. You know, if you get somewhere and you don't want to get a bunch of plastic bottles of water, so that's kind of the idea behind it. Keep a consistent hydration and not create too much garbage. And you can use a municipal water source instead of just having to go buy a bottle of water all day.
Why do you pack food?
No, I'll travel, like when I go to Fiji, for instance, I'll travel, half my suitcase is just food.
And what do you put in it?
I don't know, just whatever I like in my diet, you know? I mean, I'll have like a big thing of chia seeds, and I'll have hemp seeds, and I'll have, I don't know, snack bars that I like, and gluten-free pancake mix, and just, I don't know, I'll take sometimes a couple gallons of hemp milk or almond milk or something. So, I don't know, just when I get somewhere, then I know that I'm sort of like with familiar things around me. I really think it's just to make me feel comfortable when I get somewhere.
I understand that there is at least some digestive science behind your diet.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty into it. I'm kind of a food geek myself. I try to go mostly gluten-free. I try to eat as organically as possible and as clean as possible. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I was younger, I felt like I had so much sugar and crap in my diet that it would just affect me kind of strangely when I was a kid. So, I used to get when I was a kid, I used to get these boils, like sores on my body sometimes. And I think it was because I just had too much sugar and milk and crap in my diet. So I pretty much cut almost all dairy out of my diet. At this point, I don't really eat much corn or wheat or grains. I try to just stay away from gluten, and I've done blood tests to see what I'm allergic to. So, cut out certain foods and try to get the body working as efficiently as possible.
How do you think that's helped you?
I used to have pretty bad sinus problems all the time. I used to get like a sinusitis where I got it so bad before I had to go to the hospital a couple times. I used to have, I think it was from a corn allergy that I almost checked myself into the hospital in the emergency room once over New Year's because I could barely breathe. It was soon after that I got a blood test done, and corn was like one of the most highly allergic things I had in my diet. So,
wow.
Yeah, and it's something I didn't know. And my favorite thing was these red hot blue corn chips that I would eat like a bag or two of every single day, and I would eat that with avocados, and I would get these kind of asthmatic things happening, and I couldn't understand why. And then after I got the blood test, and it said corn was like one of the highest allergens in my diet. So, sometimes you just don't know.
11-time world champion, both the youngest ever and the oldest ever to do so. But there was a columnist who tried to put your feats into context, and I thought it was really great. It was the best one I read, and it goes, I cannot think of another athlete who's matched Slater's genius for such a long period of time. Not Kareem or Wilt or Russell, not Schumacher, not Gretzky or Nicholas or Bolt, not Tyson or Ali or LT or Manning, not Koufax or Babe Ruth, not Magic or Bird or the Pistol. To find the proper analogy, you need to look outside of sports. Slater is to surfing what Sinatra was to crooning.
Wow.
Oh, that was kind of cool.
That's amazing.
How much longer could you see yourself going for?
To me, there's just two things. It's your body holding up, and it's your mind being open. And you also have to be able to think ahead of the curve a little bit. You have to see where things are going and be able to kind of predict that, or at least go in that direction. But it's different. Everyone's got their own unique perspective and point of view in life. To have the inspiration and that excitement every morning like you have when you're a kid is really hard to do. You gotta.
And you still have that?
Not every day, no.
Okay.
No, but sometimes, sometimes I just can't sleep because I'm so excited about surfing the next day. But no, I don't have it the same as when I was a kid. But I think it's attainable. I think it's definitely, as you go through life, you collect things in your brain. It's like it's getting filled up with things, and you got to get rid of the bad things and keep the good things and leave space there, and also be inspired by some other goal besides just what you're going to do tomorrow. It's other people, and it's kind of a bigger picture of things that you want to kind of feed from and sort of get nourished off of, I guess. So yeah, I think in order to do that, you have to just you have to be able to let go of certain things that are holding you back. Your mental filters.
And provided you could do that and continue to do that, then there's really no end in sight.
No, there's no end in sight. I liken surfing to martial arts because, I've always had a love of martial arts. Who didn't love Bruce Lee as a kid? Who hasn't watched kung fu movies and just had these ideas when they were a kid. They want to, especially boys. Especially when you're a little kid, you want to kick and fight and do flips and blah blah. And so when I was a kid, I got into karate for a little while, and I've always had the idea that surfing is like a martial art. I don't think that you should get worse as you get older. There's a physical barrier where if you have injuries and you can't beat them, then yeah, there's something there that's physically blocking you. But you should get better as you get older, not like you're going to get worse because your body's failing you. There should be different levels and layers of knowledge that you have that you can always draw from. And I think in surfing it's most evident in big waves, because you look at all the best big wave guys in the world are in their 30s and 40s. You could argue even some of them are in their 50s. So those are guys who have so much time and experience in the water, in the ocean, in the elements, that they just know how to make the right decisions and how to pick the right waves, and they're comfortable enough after years and years and years of doing it to know what to expect. And but in the fast twitch kind of young man's game of aerials and competing and small waves, it's natural. The young kids are more excited and they're quicker, and you have to work training your body to be fast and keep up and keep your rotation, keep your flexibility.
What do you find to be the most difficult part of holding on to your physical skills into your mid-40s?
Holding on to physical skills, I think, for me, I think it's a number of things. It's number one, it's keeping an open mind to change. It's allowing the fact that whatever you're doing is going to pass you by. It's going to change. The game's going to change. If you're doing something physical, if you like, for instance, I'm a UFC fan. I love watching UFC fights. That game changes so fast. The style, at first it was, if you didn't know jiu-jitsu, you were going to lose. And then guys learned how to defend that, and then it became more the wrestlers became the dominant guys. Now it's kind of like guys who can switch it up and throw punches or kicks from any angle. So, it changes really fast. In surfing, it's gone a lot more to the air game, aerials and rotations. That being said, you always have to have that sort of power base in your surfing. But, you have to have an open mind to that. Even if you're at the top, even if you had the best year of your life, you gotta realize that there's something you can do better. You gotta be able to change that. Yeah, so it's all about longevity too. You don't want to go out and be doing a bunch of things that are going to get you hurt. So I haven't had too many bad injuries in my life. I got a few chronic things. I got a knee issue, and I got a lower back issue. I got a torn hip from years ago. I got a lot of scar tissue in that.
It was funny in preparing for this interview. I was reading, a slew of stories, but one was a 2006 New York Times story that wrote about your potential retirement. And obviously that's now a decade ago.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're still competing?
Competing's kind of just my stage for what I'm skilled at, really. I enjoy, there's certain aspects of it I enjoy, but it keeps a lot of what I love to do relevant, I guess, because it pushes me to increase my level all the time and to be working on that. I think when you're good at something, it's hard to kind of just walk away from it and do something else maybe you're not as good at. And also I really love the travel. The idea of stopping doing this, just the idea that I miss all the places and the experiences we have and all the places I've gotten to go over the years. But I mean, I can still go to those places, obviously, but I don't know, the competition kind of helps me to push my level too, to get up in the morning and have a goal and to see how far I can push that. I think the idea of pushing it beyond that, I mean, I always said when I was 40, I would never be on tour.
Uh-huh.
And, I can't think in my brain at all that when I'm 50, I'd be on tour. But the idea that I could surf events and be relevant and potentially be a threat at an event at 50 years old feels kind of cool, so.
Business is obviously increasingly becoming more a part of your life. I know way back when you turned down a Nike offer that would have more than doubled what you were getting from your sponsor, Quicksilver, at the time that you would have had to drop. Maybe?
To be honest with you,
Maybe
I don't
not?
think, no,
Okay.
to be honest, I don't think I did.
Okay. Then the story was wrong, but
there was, Nike made a little play in surfing here and there, but they never were able to really get a foothold or a stronghold in surfing like they were in other sports. Nike's image fits so well so many other sports, and with surfing it's a little different. There's kind of an endemic market strategy that kind of, when you grow up with these brands that were created by surfers, and in the surf world there's some sort of attachment there that it kind of like a mold that can't be broken in some way. So
how do you go about evaluating offers?
At this point, when I was younger, obviously if I got an offer when I was 15, I got an offer from Quicksilver, and they wanted to pay me $5,000 a year for travel or for whatever, and I had no money or whatever. I just thought, wow, that's so cool, $5,000 a year. I can't believe it. I was like gasping on the phone, like covering the phone, oh my gosh. And it was so exciting for me, like growing up in this little city and doing this thing I love, and all of a sudden somebody wants to pay me for it. All you see is dollar signs, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then as you follow that, the dollar signs, you're obviously going to go towards what's bigger and bigger, and hopefully it'll be with some brand or company that you like as well, or you like the people at. But all those things evolve, and for me at this point, to do a sponsorship, it's got to be something that's in line with my philosophies on life, on sustainability. If it's food, it's got to be something that I feel healthy, or something I would eat or buy or use myself anyways. I think that's kind of the same with any other products or things I work to endorse. It's got to be something that makes sense in my life. I did get a few offers from like drink companies, and they weren't in line with the things that I think about health, and they weren't educating anyone about health, so I didn't take those offers. And in fact, I started my own drink company with some friends based around what we thought was good. Instead of just going after the dollars, I was able to work on something that I felt a lot more strongly about.
How did the idea for the surf park come about?
The idea for the surf park came about, I had a guy who used to shape my surfboards named Matt Keckley call me, and he said, you got to see this thing I saw. And eventually, anyways, he showed me this video of this wave this guy had created, this idea for a wave this guy had created in this pool that was, I guess to most easily describe it, it's like a donut-shaped pool. And there was an outer wall that had these moving parts, and they would kind of line up in unison and create these like wave, it was like a wave going around the outside of this pool with these pistons.
Right.
And it was, I don't know, I saw this video and my brain I couldn't turn it off. I'm like, we got to make this thing. This is incredible. And
easier said than done.
Easier said than done, yeah. Yeah, long story short, we started to look into the actual technology to create the swell. And we realized that that technology wasn't going to be the one that would work for us. It didn't have as much energy as we hoped, and it wouldn't create the wave we wanted. So we kind of evolved the technology from there. The idea of how to make a swell, kind of quietly kept working on it for years and years. Obviously now it's 2016. That was like 2005 when we started this. About 2.5, 3 years ago, my partner said to me, he said, look, if we're ever going to get this thing off the ground, you and I need to just put our money up and build one of these things, buy some land, make this wave, see if it works, or you just go out in a blaze of glory, failing. So I was like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just figure this thing out.
What's your ultimate goal with it?
My ultimate goal in it is just to have a lot of fun.
I mean, but you don't invest this amount of time
Yeah.
and money to just have a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, yeah, you do. I mean, what else do you do it for? I didn't do this thinking, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of money off this thing. You know, to me, it's like a childhood dream in a way. You know, when I was a kid, my brother and I, well, we used to go to Wet and Wild, and we used to go try to body surf in the pool there and stuff, and imagine we could surf in it. And then when I was about 14, my brother Sean was 17. We rode for this company called Sundeck, and they used to send us on these little promo tours to malls and blah, blah. And they sent us out to Texas one time to go surf in this wave pool. And so Sean and I got to surf this wave pool for like a couple days, and we were doing like an exhibition, and all these people in Texas that had no idea what surfing was. And we were in somewhere near Houston, I think, or San Antonio. I don't even remember. But there was this wave pool, and they sent us there to go surf. And the wave was awful, but it was so fun to go surf this pool, just he and I, and there was like hundreds of people watching us. And actually, probably the best thing about it was we found like $100 floating in the pool. My brother, somebody's on the edge of the pool and looks down and goes, hey, can you get that bill for me right there? I see a bill floating. And my brother grabbed it and handed it. It was like a $5 bill. So in between waves, there's like a few minutes in between waves, and we started looking around, and all of a sudden, a $5 bill, a $20 bill, a $1 bill. We started finding all this money. So I think we found like $73 in the pool. You know, people just, their pockets emptying.
Could you see the day where there's a surf league competition at a wave pool, or even one day in the Olympics?
Yeah, well, one of the guys we work with, when we had a first meeting with him, he said, you know, I think you need kind of like an idea about like your ultimate goal with this thing. And he said, you know, maybe that goal when talking to people you want to work with is, we think this can get surfing in the Olympics. In order to have a consistent, fair, not even for the Olympics, but even for surf competitions, to have a repeatable, you know, comparing apples to apples kind of competition, where it's more of an objective thing and less subjective, then I think this is the way to do it. I think that we could create a good enough, high quality enough wave in order to make the playing field totally fair for people, you know? It's not like you got the lucky wave that came, or he read the conditions right, which is obviously I think a huge skill in surfing as well. Reading the ocean right, making the right choices. There's a lot to that. I think that does define people who know the ocean better than the next guy. But you know, just to be able to compare the actual skills on a wave, I think it's easier. It would be much easier to do if you had a good, repeatable quality wave. So yeah, I think that we could hold competitions. I think we're going to. I don't even think we're going to. I know we're going to hold competitions in the pool at some point. Maybe sort of exhibitionary kind of thing to start, but I've had literally thousands of people inquire to me, how do I get in that thing, you know? A day after I put it online, 2 days after I put it online, because it had soaked in a little bit actually, and I had already had to think about it because I got hundreds, if not more, requests from people, friends, and people I didn't know to surf the thing.
It had to be a cool feeling.
It was incredible. In fact, I don't know if I could ever repeat that or ever have that happen in any other way. I felt like we found gold for the first time or something, you know, like surfer's gold. I don't know what it was, but the feeling was that we had sort of achieved this dream for so many people. they saw it and they were like, wow, I imagined that, but I never got my mind around it, and now it exists.
You were 10. I think your dad was the coach of your football team
Yeah.
at the time, and he actually let you skip football practice to go surfing.
Yeah.
Why was that such kind of a pivotal moment for you mentally then?
This is probably like in 1982 or something, and you know, surfing was probably professional surfing was like 6 years old at the time. You know, I think the first world tour year was 1977. So 5-6 years down the track, it's not like professional surfing is some big potential life to live. You know, I think the person who won the world title the first year made like $2,000 that year in prize money. You know, there wasn't a lucrative thing. It wasn't like going to play football or baseball or basketball. You know, I was a pretty good football player. And those were potentially huge careers to follow. I know, but I was a small kid. I wasn't going to be like some big football player and probably be successful at that. But I think my dad allowing me to skip football practice kind of gave me a green light to go and surf as much as I want.
And your mom would let you skip school sometimes to go surfing
Occasionally.
as well, right? And
Yeah, occasionally.
as context, I mean, I think when you finished high school, you finished 7th academically in your class. So even if you were getting to skip school occasionally, I mean,
Yeah.
there was still enough of an importance you put on academics that it wasn't negatively impacting you.
I was responsible with my schooling. My mom would allow us to skip one day per semester to go surf.
Okay.
If there was contests, yeah, we could miss more days. And you know, I knew that if I was a good student, my principal at the school was going to let me go and give me extra days off.
What sort of mental games would you play with yourself when you were out there surfing as a kid?
I still play similar games. Actually, the other day, I was surfing and I would just like set these weird little goals. You know, I'd have goals in mind, like I want to win a certain contest or win a world title or whatever it was, whenever it was. And I would say, like, if I can catch this wave right here that doesn't look like I can catch it, I'm going to win the world title this year, or I'm going to win that contest next week, or I'm going to, you know, something great's going to happen in the future.
And this is when you're a kid, or even present
No,
day?
when I was a
Okay.
kid, but it's present day too. You know, I actually was kind of thinking that the other day in my head too. Like, if I catch this wave, you know, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it because it's like present time. But, you know, I still have the same thoughts. You know, when I surf, I'm still like a little kid, and yeah, it's just surfing to me kind of. I don't know. There's just nothing more I love in the world. You know, everything I do, all this stuff, all this. I mean, I'm only meeting you because I love surfing. You know, everything that's come into my life. I would say 99% of the things that come into my life are all because of surfing, because it's my passion. It's what I love to do. There's nothing more fun than me on earth than to go surfing.
So you started surfing around 3 years old. By 14 years old, you're beating professionals that have surfed longer than you are old. What do you think allowed you to become so talented at surfing so quickly?
I think talent comes from it's sort of a recipe. It's like a concoction of things. You know, sometimes people just have good timing. Sometimes people have a natural talent. Sometimes they get lucky. You know, there's all these sort of things that can happen. I think a bunch of those parts of the formula were given to me in my life. So, you know, I think I was naturally talented. I think I was gifted with understanding the ocean, and it comes natural to me. You know, my dad was a real water person. And just growing up at the beach, watching waves, watching guys surf, all that kind of stuff, that became real natural to me to understand how to maneuver on a wave and fit myself into that as if I was a natural part of that energy, a natural part of the motion that's happening in the ocean. So I always felt like there was even now, I always feel like there's a perfect way to be in sync with what's happening in the ocean. You know, people look at the ocean that don't know anything about it, and they're like, "That's crazy looking." But once you put yourself in this situation, you realize there's a flow to everything. There's patterns in everything in nature, and you know, it's deciphering those and then putting your own spin on it that is important. I think beyond that, I think mentally or emotionally, I was in a certain situation that caused me to want to be really good, to maybe, I don't know, make everything else seem better in my life. And you know, competitively, even in school, I was always able to win things, you know, like running races or, I don't know, I always felt like I could set my mind on something and achieve it. Like I can visualize things and trust that they're going to happen. I think everyone can do that, but maybe some people don't put the trust in that they're going to happen. But, you know, I had one happen to me the other day. I could feel, I wanted a certain thing to happen. I was surfing that contest in Hawaii, and I just wanted to get a tube. You know, we talked about Brock Little, who recently passed away. Brock was one of the biggest mentors in my life, of everyone I've ever met. And in 1990, he got a barrel at Waimea, and it still is like one of the all-time standout waves as far as surfers are concerned. He had two waves that day, one big giant one he fell on and another one he got barreled on. And I was just in this contest the other day thinking, I just want to get a barrel for Brock, you know? And it was my very last wave with about 10 minutes left in the heat. It was the last wave I was able to catch in the contest, and I got a little tube. And I don't know, I just felt like I could feel it was going to happen beforehand, you know? I don't know if that's a miracle or if that's just natural, you know? I don't think it's like a miracle. I think it's like, I think what I was saying about natural order to things, you know, either you're aware and tuned into things or you're not. And sometimes I feel like I'm not, and sometimes I feel like I am. And the other day something just hit me and I'm like, I'm gonna get this wave, and it just kind of happened. So it's, I don't think it's anything amazing. I think it's there to be had, you know, for everyone at all times, and accessed, you know. People talk about it in different ways, like being in the moment, being in the now, or knowing the secret, or whatever it is, you know. However it is you perceive that thing, I think, I really think all things are available to us in the moment, and you know, we're either aware or not aware of them.
Your parents got divorced. Your mom, you know, was basically responsible for taking care of you and your two brothers, and times were tough financially. How often would you move condo to condo growing up?
We lived in one house till I was 11, I think, 11 or 12. And then we moved to another condo for about 3 years, and then we moved into another house for a couple years, and another house for about 6 months. And we moved around a little bit. I think we lived in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses between 11 and, I don't know, 18 years old or something like that. So we weren't like moving a couple times a year or anything like that. But
your mom was telling me she thought it was the day the Challenger blew up, January 28th, 1986. It was a particularly cold day.
Yeah, really cold day.
That day, and you and your brothers needed coats to go out, but she didn't have enough money for 3 coats for each of you guys to have a coat, and so she kept you guys home from school that day. And just looking back on it, she said she just remembers the embarrassment and the humiliation of, you know, not being able to send, you know, her kids to school. You know, you mentioned like heat or hot water. I mean, those weren't things that you could kind of rely on consistently during that period, right?
I'll defend my mom's memory here a little bit.
Okay.
The reason we didn't go to school the day the shuttle blew up was because we got back from California late the night before. And
Okay.
I had actually my brother and I had been at a surf contest in California. But it was the coldest day of the year that year. We were just tired and slept in. But yeah, there were numerous occasions where we didn't have the money for things, you know. And one of them was in 1986, that same year, was the world titles, the world amateur titles in England. We didn't have the money to get there. I didn't have the sponsorship to get there. And my mom had this 1938 Gibson gold top banjo that she played, and she actually pawned it to get us the money to go on the trip. And so at the time, I didn't think much about it. I'm sure it stung her, you know, but I didn't even know. She just, you know, did what she had to do as a parent to get me and my brother to England. I think she sold it for $600 or something, and that thing's probably worth like 30 grand now.
Wow.
So actually, if you know anyone who has one, let me know. I wouldn't mind purchasing one.
How often did she work, and what were the varying jobs that she held?
My mom had a bunch of different jobs throughout the years. You know, I mean, at one point when I was about, I guess when I was like 8, she became a firefighter, an EMT. She put herself through school to go and do that. I think she was the first female firefighter in our county. Then she did that for like 2 years. She got sexually harassed by her captain and ended up quitting the job. She became a bartender for a little while, and she was bartending at the bar where my dad used to drink a lot. So she kind of got a chance to keep an eye on him and probably get him a few free beers. So it was cheaper for us, you know. And then she worked at the, right around that time also, she worked at the place where, actually I think it was before that, but she had worked at this little food place at the beach where I grew up surfing. And
the Islander Hut?
The Islander Hut, yeah, and she had funny stories about that, because by the end of the week when she would get her paycheck, she would owe a few dollars for all the food we had eaten. So basically she just almost kept it at a certain level where she never made any money at that job. We ate all of her money throughout the week on a tab.
How do you think his drinking impacted you growing up?
Yeah, alcoholism is a weird thing. You know, my dad didn't drink a hard liquor. He just liked to drink beer, but he would drink beer all day long, and he would think he had 2 beers, and he could barely walk, you know. And, you know, he wasn't like abusive to us or anything like that. It wasn't like some crazy drunk dad. It was just like, my dad was like the fun drunk dad. In fact, he, you know, when my dad was drinking, he'd come home and wrestle with us, and I don't know, most of the time I think about my dad, it's just funny. Like, my dad was like kind of the class clown in a way, you know? And he was a super fun dad. He liked to surf, he liked to dive, he liked to go camping. You know, we'd go into the river and find clams and, you know, have barbecues, and he just loved to be outdoors, you know? But, you know, he didn't have any awareness whatsoever about his issue or how it could be fixed, or, you know, he didn't have a very good example in his family of parents. You know, his parents split up when he was young. His mom was married numerous times. She died when he was pretty young still. But you know, my dad impacted me in different ways. You know, I sort of look at my dad as a couple different guys. Before he passed away, he goes, you know, by the time I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be a father. I knew I wanted to have kids. And, you know, so he was kind of telling me how important it was that he had children, how appreciative he was before he passed away that he had the 3 of us. Well, the 4 of us. We have a half brother as well, who's older than us. But on the other hand, he showed me I think I learned from, well, he was a lot of fun. He wasn't a sincere guy very often, but when he was, it was very sincere. You know, there's a really fun side to my dad. I think everyone, to a man, probably almost every single person my dad ever met, they liked him. You know, but some people didn't, you know, think he was the greatest guy towards my mom, and he was. I don't know, he taught me in different ways. Unfortunately, you know, some of the ways he taught me was by screwing up, and other ways it was by being funny and being a good dad.
How well do you recall sleeping on the concrete driveway?
Oh, that's like yesterday. Yeah, I remember that really clearly.
What do you remember from it?
Well, my parents would get in these sort of knockdown, drag-out screaming fights once in a while. And it seemed to be, I don't know how often it was, you know. Looking back, it seemed like it was all the time. But it might have been like once a month. I don't really remember exactly. There was just one time I remember it was getting really bad, and we were supposed to go to the mall, and I was really excited we were going to go to the mall right after dark. And so we were getting ready to go outside and get in the van and drive, and they started fighting, and I just remember them just screaming and screaming and screaming, and next thing you know, I realized we weren't going to the mall because it was almost 9 o'clock, and the mall closed at 9, and this probably started at like 6 or 7. And so my brother and I didn't want to go back in the house, so we just like laid down on the concrete. I remember just laying there on the concrete, kind of my eyes open, but trying to go to sleep and just listening to them scream and yell at each other.
Your dad passed away 62 years old after battling cancer for a couple of years. And from what I read, you were angry at him for a long time. What did it take to get to the space where you were able to let that anger go before he passed away?
In my early 20s, I realized I had a lot of anger with my dad. I remember, particularly in '95, I was 23 years old. I remember just having like nights where I'd go to sleep and I'd be so angry at my dad. And I talked to my mom about it one time, and she said, she goes, you know, well, what do you want to do about it? I said, I don't know, I just want to talk to Dad. I want to like ask him these things. She goes, look, you can do whatever you want, but you're probably not going to get the answer you're looking for, you know? She was like, I know your dad so well, he's probably not going to answer it in a way that's going to answer anything for you. You got to kind of answer it yourself.
What do you want to ask him?
I don't know, just like why he drank so much, or, you know, why he was the way he was, or, you know, I don't even really know. I just had this anger towards him. And I think my mom saying that kind of resolved that for me, because I think I realized it was probably true. You know, he probably couldn't answer things for me that I needed to answer for myself. You know, it was just a case of kind of growing up and needing to grow into my own skin and become an adult myself and learn responsibilities that, you know, I think part of it was there were certain things around the money issues and certain responsibilities of growing up that I wanted to have instilled in me without having to think about it. And I didn't really learn those things, so I had to learn them other ways. But I also realized I had a lot of father figures around me that were really good, that have been great people in my life. And you know, Al Merrick, who made my surfboards for years, he was you know, Al's been such a father figure to me and such a great person to be around and learn from. And Bruce Raymond, who was a boss of mine at Quicksilver, you know, just a couple families in Hawaii I used to stay with, the Johnsons and the Ikes, that would, you know, the dads in those families were such father figures to me, and they were best friends, and I spent a lot of time around them. And I started gravitating as I got older towards families that were really kind of maybe lacking the things that our family had. You know, the parents that were together for a long time and real loving towards each other, and, you know, had a real open communication and that kind of thing. So I think subconsciously I just started searching those things out and being able to find them with other people. And so, yeah.
You wrote in your book, there was never a time in my life that I grew so much in such a short amount of time. I stopped thinking the world revolved around me and started becoming a man and a person. When talking about kind of the last, you know, couple months of your father's life, what about that period you think kind of allowed you to grow up?
I know when your parent dies, I think there's a, gosh, how to explain it? It's you know, one of the most awful feelings in the world. There's also this sort of like sense of like there's just this sense that you've got to grow up and you've got to learn things, and you're sort of forced. You know, there's no direction to go except for to kind of answer things for yourself in some way. There was always that sense that one day I'll ask my dad this, or one day he'll tell me this, or I'll learn this from my dad. And you know, there's not a whole lot of things that I look back. Usually somebody says, most people think back on their dad and they go, my dad taught me this, my dad taught me that, or he used to say this. And when I think that about my dad, I just think of all the funny things he used to say. My dad he never sat us down and said, listen kids, you need to, you know, do this with your lives. In fact, he was almost completely hands off in that way. He was, you know, I think in my early 20s, I was sort of yearning for that father figure, my dad, to come through and kind of like rescue me with this perfect answer of like what I should do in my life or something. And I think that was what I struggled with after having like financial issues and you know, relationships fall apart and stuff like that. But you know, it became obvious when he passed away, just in that time before, that that wasn't going to happen, and I was going to have to find those answers elsewhere, and that was okay, you know.
How's being a father been?
It's been interesting in my life because just because I'm not a full-time dad, you know, the whole time my daughter has been raised by her mother, almost 100% in physical time, and you know, I've been traveling. So, you know, when your daughter's 3 and you're traveling around the world the whole time, you're like, you know, if you're not coming home every week between contests, you're not seeing her very much. You know, she can't just jump on a plane and come visit me. So,
What's the hardest part of that for you?
hardest part, I think, probably the hardest part for me is my daughter feeling like she doesn't have a dad there all the time, you know. So, you know, and that's hard for her. I know that was especially hard for her when she was younger. So, yeah, you know, a lot of times people have kids and then their career kind of stops or gets put on hold, and you know, mine didn't. You know, so I think in that sense, I probably have a little bit of guilt about that. You know, because you know, you know, kids are just innocent. You know, and so they need to have adults around them to, you know, just to physically be there at all times. And so I think that's probably the toughest thing for me looking back at, you know, fatherhood.
Your late friend Brock Little said about you, Kelly wants people to like him so much that he never says no, but his fame and success don't seem to feel very good to him. What do you think of that?
Brock rarely said something that wasn't just spot on or true. Yeah, there's a lot of things around fame or success that I think if you look at people who are really successful, a lot of times they're doing it for strange reasons, and I'd include myself in that. You know, I think when I was young, I just wanted to be recognized and noticed or something, you know. It was like a sense of insecurity. I wanted to be good at something so that it would like cover up any of my own personal insecurities. And so I found that I always felt like I was pretty gifted physically with being able to learn things or do things. And, you know, surfing became my craft, and I felt like if I surfed really good, or I mean, I'm kind of psychoanalyzing myself a little bit here, but looking back, it makes sense to me. You know, I felt like it would make any kind of personal or family pain or insecurities kind of go away if I was really good at something, you know. And you know, I could always resort to kind of relying on success, physical success, or, you know, competitive success to make me feel whole or something, you know. I don't know. That's a little bit of an overview or whatever, but you know,
And to what extent have you always found that to be true, that the success would make you feel whole?
Yeah, I thought that the success would make me feel whole or whatever, but you know, at the end of the day, you got to go to bed and live with yourself, you know, and in your own head. And just because I've had success or won titles or contests or made money, those kind of things, that hasn't made any of the problems or issues that I deal with myself disappear, you know. It just, in some ways, it can probably make them a little more difficult because you're not forced to deal with things. And you know, I would say most of my conscience and that little voice in the back of my head probably comes from my mom, you know, because I think my mom was the one who always taught me the lessons. You know, she would always say the things to me that my dad probably should have said, you know, or that I thought my dad should have said. But my mom was always kind of that voice of reason, and she was always the one grounding me and, you know, and keeping me in line. And I was much more scared of my mom than my dad, you know, which should be the other way around.
Right.
You know, one time I was telling my friends this story the other day. I was surfing at my home break when I was a kid. My dad was out with us, and one of my best buddies was surfing. He came to visit me for the weekend and stay at my house. And we went surfing, and this wave came. I got this perfect wave, and my friend dropped in on me and blocked me on the wave. You know, he cut me off and made me fall. And I came up and I was 10 years old, 12 years old maybe, and I started cussing and screaming. Every cuss word I could think, I was screaming at him. And you know, I thought I was so cool because I was just like cussing my friend out. And I look over about 20 feet away, and my dad's sitting there looking at me, and he's just like shaking his head. I just held my breath and went underwater, and I just stayed under as long as I could. And when I came out, my dad was about from me away from me, sitting on his board, and he's just waiting, just patiently. And I went back underwater, and I tried to pretend I didn't see him, and I came back up, and I was like, okay, well, I guess he's not going anywhere. and I just kind of like looked at him like, oh, what are you gonna do? And he goes, don't ever let me catch you doing that. Don't ever let me hear you saying that stuff again, or I'm gonna tell your mother. And I was like, oh no, don't tell mom. But my mom had a sailor's mouth. It's hard to get mad at your kids when you do the same things, you know. I mean, it was any parent who like smokes weed or drinks or whatever. If they find their kid doing the same thing, it'd be hard for them to get mad at them. You know, my mom cussed as well as anyone. So, but the idea that my mom was gonna get me, gonna hear what I said to my friend was so terrifying. And because my dad really, he was such a cruisy guy. He was never gonna do anything to me. My dad was like the most accepting guy in the world. And be right there. Did they yell to me?
I love you, Kelly Slater.
Oh, is that what they said?
There's a whole group of people out in the street right now.
Oh,
really?
I thought I heard something about a sweater.
And he loves your sweater.
Oh.
There was a period of time where just because of your single-minded commitment to the sport, you would go pretty much months, I think, without calling your mom or your brothers. I mean, what was the mindset during that time?
There were times where I felt like my mom was peering into my life a little too much and like making too strong opinions of my life. So at one point in the there's just this point in the mid-90s, mid-late 90s where like a lot of things came to a head for me in my life, and I was trying to figure out my relationships and my friendships and my family stuff. And my mom and I started butting heads really kind of heavily around it. And at one point I didn't speak to my mom for like 6 months. And but I felt like she kind of crossed the line with me, telling me how to live my life, and I was trying to figure it out. And I probably wasn't man enough to just grow up and say, oh, maybe my mom's right. Or even if your mom's not right, you gotta tell her she's right, and you gotta just go, let it go, Moms are just trying to look out for you. But, I was struggling with being my own person and finding my own identity. And, unfortunately, our relationship suffered a bit for a while there.
What was that process like for you of just finding yourself and your own identity?
To find my own identity, I kind of I felt like I had to have a little bit of like tough love with people around me, somewhat.
Why?
Well, because, I was resentful about the money situation we had, where, basically all my money was gone, and then, also trying to have my mom tell me how to do things and why to do things. And I did Baywatch, and I was very reluctant to do it. I really didn't want to do it, but my mom and my manager at the time really wanted me to do it, and he more or less just signed me up without me approving it. And I don't know how that happens, but in my life at that time that happened. And I was so embarrassed that I was going to have to do the show, and I just really didn't want to. I wanted to go surfing, and I wanted to win contests. I wanted to be a professional surfer, and that was it, you know. I wasn't trying to go be an actor, and surfing wasn't some launch pad to acting. Surfing was my craft, and that was what I was good at. I wish I had been a little more mature in being able to deal with that, but I didn't have the skills at the time.
The danger that's inherent with your sport. We can go to the contest recently in Hawaii, the Big Eddy. How scared were you at times of that?
I don't know. I wasn't real. When I was actually in the contest, yeah, the waves were massive the other day. It was pretty scary, but it was more scary the lead up to it. The night before when you hear, because what happens? We call these buoys. There's these buoys offshore, a couple 100 miles off or 10 miles off or whatever. There's a few different buoys in the ocean. So you look up online or you call these buoys, and it tells you the height and the interval between waves, and from that you can determine how big the waves are going to be. So the night before we're calling the buoys, and we see this buoy pop to like 25 or 26 feet at like 19 seconds, which basically means it's going to be freaking huge. That basically just translates to like 50-foot faces, something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what are the nerves? Like you think you could get hurt or?
Oh, no,
what?
I mean, no, the nerves are you think you might drown or get in a really dangerous situation. And also that pressure's on you to go out in 1 hour to go catch 4 waves. That contest, you get to surf twice for an hour each, and you get 4 waves. So you want to put on a good showing, and you want to honor the people that put you into the event, and I also had a little bit of funny nerves because Brock passed away the week before, and Brock was really like, Brock was the guy who showed Shane and myself and all of our group of friends all how to surf big waves and how not to be scared, and well, as Brock would put it, just don't be a So, Brock just made fun of us as kids because we didn't surf as big waves as him. And so Brock was the king of our group of guys, and Brock led the pack. He was always the guy running the show and showing us how to do it, and he would drive his truck faster than you, and he would surf a wave bigger than you, and he would go and fight anybody, and he would, Brock was completely fearless as far as I know. Like, he's probably the most fearless person I ever met in my life. He became a stunt guy, worked on almost all of Brian Grazer's films for the last 10 or 15 years. In fact, you could probably spot him if you really were, if you could really tell who's who in movies, you could probably spot Brock in quite a few movies like The Da Vinci Code and blah, blah. He actually has a line in the movie in The Da Vinci Code where he's a French cop and he's speaking French. He's like, I didn't know what I was doing. He goes, I don't even think I said the thing right. But yeah, Brock was our hero, man. He was just like the most fearless guy I ever met in my life with absolutely everything. So, he passed away just the week before, and so it was an exciting week for us that a swell was coming, and we call that the Brock swell. It was also a sad week leading up to that, and I was kind of nervous because I was just like, I just want to, I don't know, I was just feeling a little bit, I was feeling pretty mortal last week after Brock passed away, so yeah, it was kind of just it was a funny week of emotions for me.
Where's the most dangerous place you've ever surfed, and what made it dangerous?
Most dangerous place I've ever surfed, I would probably say it's either Pipeline or Mavericks up at Half Moon Bay. I would say Pipeline because a number of things. It's shallow, it's an intense wave. Quite a number of people have died there. Drownings or getting knocked out, hitting your head on the reef, and then drowning, obviously. In fact, a friend of mine got knocked unconscious and basically drowned this winter and was saved by a guy who saw him in the water. And had that guy not been there, he would have, like, I would say 99.9% for sure have died. Luckily, this guy just happened to see him and grab him and had swim fins on and was able to keep him above water and get him to the beach. Half Moon Bay, Mavericks. There's been I know a couple of my friends have died there.
How?
Drowning. Two friends of mine drowned there. Mark Fu in '94 and Sion Milosky just a few years ago.
And explain what a Maverick is.
Well, Mavericks is the surf spot. It's just a big, giant wave that kind of it's way bigger than pretty much all the waves around it, just the way the swell hits there and the way the bottom is contoured. But also there's also rocks. There's been multiple great white attacks there. There's been 2 or 3 great white attacks there. So it's got every element of fear. The water's cold. It's one of the most intense waves you'll ever see. Now there's a lot of people surfing it, so you have to deal with the crowd issue. Pipeline, you also are dealing with the crowd issue, and that kind of changes your choices. And there's been a lot of guys injured by other people's boards or running into people, or sometimes when there's that many people, you get a little nervous and you kind of make the wrong decision. You don't want to hurt someone else, and you don't want to get hurt by someone else. So the whole decision process changes quite a bit when that's the case.
How badly did you hurt yourself when you knocked yourself out in France not too long ago?
Yeah, I got knocked out. I laugh about it now, but I had to use all my brain power to not get post-traumatic stress disorder afterwards, because it was kind of scary. I almost had 2-wave hold down. Like, I came up and the second wave broke on me as I came up. And I thought it was kind of funny because the waves weren't very big and I basically had a 2-wave hold down. A 2-wave hold down in surfing is kind of like, it's kind of a badge of honor. Once you've had a 2-wave hold down, you've had a really heavy wipeout. But this one was kind of funny because the waves were real close together, so it wasn't really like a proper 2-wave hold down. But my very next wave I took off on, and I did a turn off the top of the wave, and the wave just kind of bent away from me, so my board kind of got air and flew out of the water, and I just judged it wrong, and I over-rotated in the turn, and when I fell backwards, and my board separated from my feet and went below me, and I fell backwards and hit my head and got knocked out instantly. I just hit myself super hard back here, and I woke up unconscious. I woke up from being unconscious. I was underwater still, and I don't know. I just woke up and it was kind of like I was in the Twilight Zone. I felt like my whole vision in life was like this tiny little tube of light, and all of a sudden it kind of like just was getting wider and wider. My head, my ears were ringing and stuff, and I realized I was underwater, I guess, because just for whatever reason you have like a mammalian reflex to hold your breath when you're underwater. So I guess as I came to, I realized I was underwater, so I didn't breathe, and I just started swimming, and I kept swimming and swimming, but I didn't know which way was up, and I swam so far, I was starting to kind of like become conscious more and more, but I was still like, felt like I was dreaming, and I realized, gosh, I've swum so far, I've swum like 6 or 7 strokes and I haven't hit air, I don't know where I'm going, and I felt my hand just barely kind of go above the water, so I kind of reached my face in that direction and tried to take a breath, and I kind of breathed half foam and half air. And then I came up and I started going into shock really fast, and I just grabbed my board and turned towards shore, and the next wave hit me up towards the beach. And luckily I was close to shore. And as I hit the shore, I fell off my board, and the next couple waves, like one or two waves rolled me, kind of like I was just laying in the water, kind of getting rolled by waves, but I knew I was safe at that point. And then I kind of, it was a really bizarre feeling because with the contest in town, there's a lot of fans, surf fans there and stuff.
Right.
And so there was this, about 20 yards behind me, there was this really high seawall, and there was about 100 French people on there, and they were like yelling my name and taking pictures and stuff, and nobody realized that I was injured. And so it was really, that's why I say it's like a Twilight Zone, because I was like in kind of going into serious shock, and potentially could have just drowned right then. And so I'm on the beach kind of like absorbing like this whole thing, and there's people like yelling my name and taking pictures. And I'm like laying on the beach. I'm like laying there kind of completely startled at what just happened, realizing I'm really lucky. And then I took my leash off, had my board, luckily I had a board leash on my, connected to my board, but I was sitting on the beach and I was on dry sand, and I took my leash off and I got really scared. I realized like, okay, now I'm I'm definitely in shock, because when I took my leash off, like the surfboard was kind of like, I guess, like my lifeline in the water, you know. That was the one thing that was going to make me float or have somebody find me if I was still knocked out. And so when I took it off, even though I was on dry sand, I got really scared, and I was like, oh man, I'm so messed up right now. And so I had sand all over me because I'd been like rolling around in the sand and stuff. So I kind of waded back into the water and washed myself off, and then I sat down on the beach for about 3 or 4 minutes. My buddy came in, my friend Ross came in from surfing, and he was kind of like, oh, you done now? And he looked at me and he goes, man, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I explained what happened to him. He's like, man, your eyes are like kind of rolling back in your head. And I was like, yeah, I just got so knocked out. And so we walked up through this crowd of people, and as soon as I got up the stairs, all these people were grabbing me and trying to take pictures with me and stuff. And I started yelling at people, because I was just like, give away, just everyone get the hell away from me. Nobody, they didn't know it.
Right.
They had no idea something bad just happened to me. And so I felt kind of bad, but at the same time I was like in shock, so I didn't know what was going on.
Is that the closest you've been to ever drowning or
no,
getting really hurt?
I got knocked out once when I was 19 for a longer period of time. I think this one was only for a few seconds, or maybe just like, it might have been instant. I don't really know. A friend of mine was on the beach and saw me fall and said he almost ran into the water to go get me, but he saw me pop up. So it must only been a couple seconds that I was under. But and even 1 second unconscious underwater is a bad second.
Right.
But I had one where I was unconscious, I think for about 30 seconds in Java one time when I was 19. And I got amnesia from that, actually. I had amnesia for about 12 hours, which was pretty frightening. Especially when you're on a boat in the middle of nowhere and you don't know where you are or how long you've been there.
Did you think that could have been it?
Yeah, that could have been it. But, it wasn't.
How about closest call with a shark? Obviously, the footage of Mick from a while back's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think the thing that happened with Mick was a close call for me too, I'm guessing, because
You were there only moments before.
yeah, I was right where Mick was. I surfed right where Mick was for an hour up until about 2 minutes before that happened to Mick. And I had been in a heat with him for half an hour. I lost. So he went on shore to kind of get some drinks and get reset for the final. And I stayed out surfing for that half an hour break. So I was surfing right there that whole time. And
To give context, he's just in the water, and all of a sudden, Mick and all of a sudden,
no, to give context, yeah,
shark pops up.
he paddles out for his heat, him and Julian Wilson. The heat starts, me and there was only like 3 or 4 of us in the water at the time. Maybe 5 people had surfed in that half an hour period of time. And me and one of my friends came in right as we got to the beach. It was about a couple minutes into the heat starting. Right as we hit the sand, I just saw the boats and jet skis going over in the lineup. And I couldn't hear what was happening. I didn't know what was happening, but I said to my friend, there's only one reason boats would ever go in the lineup during a heat, and that's got to be a shark attack. And so we ran up the beach, and sure enough, that's what they were screaming and yelling. And I mean, by that time we knew Mick was fine and everything was okay. This is probably 2 minutes after it happened. Within a minute and a half, 2 minutes, we knew Mick was okay. And so everyone was kind of just, gosh, that was close. But then we sat there and watched the footage, and then there's the shock of afterwards, Mick's shock afterwards, and a whole world watching something live. Like, what are the chances? What are the chances that wasn't in some random heat in the beginning of the contest that maybe a few people were watching online or something, but not like everyone focused on the final in this contest in at Jeffreys Bay, where there's been a number of shark attacks. Let's be honest, there's been quite a few shark attacks there over the years, but never during a contest. And what are the chances it's going to be one of the 2 guys? I mean, there was 20 other guys surfing down the point somewhere. And the other weird thing about it was that the director in the booth at the time said, get a 1-shot close-up on Mick. And right when they went to that 1-shot close-up in the live thing is when the shark thing happened. It's just so bizarre. I mean, it was all, man, Mick had such a crazy year. That poor guy, he had such an awful, strange year last year. Now it's been reported his wife and him have split up, but that was happening a year ago. He had the shark incident. He just narrowly lost the world title a day after his brother died as well. all these terrible things happening to Mick all in 1 year. I mean, you gotta commend the guy's resilience for, you know, he's just a good, happy dude, and he's just gone through some really tough stuff in the last year. And yeah, I'm sure it will make him stronger. And Mick's already one of the best guys I know, but man, what a radical year to go through.
Surfing in the Olympics. It's being considered for the 2020 games in Tokyo.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood is that it happens?
It's been talked about for years, you know. There's been a lot of lobbying going on with some people in the surf world and talking to the IOC. And I know as early as 1984 they came down and watched the World Championships in Huntington, some officials from the IOC. It's interesting for Japan because there's a pretty strong surf culture there, actually, that people might not realize. There's some great surf in Japan. I think a wave pool in Japan makes a lot of sense because, and I'm not trying to pitch like, okay, well, let's just run the wave pool thing and run it in the Olympics, but it would make sense because it gives you can have exact start times and you know how to control your field and that kind of thing. Japan has great, amazing surf on its day, but it's a little inconsistent, and especially in the summer months. It's a summer Olympics, isn't it? Yeah, so the summertime in Japan can have really slow surf or no surf. It can be really flat for periods of time. That's just kind of the rule of thumb with the east coast of any country, because all the storms are going west to east. So mostly they're taking waves away from you instead of sending waves towards you. In the summertime, you don't have much storm activity anyways. But yeah, a wave pool in Japan would make sense because when you think about Japan, you think about engineering, you think about technology, and all those sorts of things. And you know,
And craftsmanship is really important.
Craftsmanship
to
is
Japanese.
totally important to Japanese. So it would be really interesting if a wave pool was a way to display surfing the first time in the Olympics.
So I mean, since you brought that up, what's the process involved with actually pitching them on your technology?
No, I really don't know the process because I'm not one of those people lobbying to try to get in the Olympics. But you know, if it were to happen, I'm all for it. But if it doesn't, that's okay with me too. But
If it does, are you there competing?
that's a good question.
I mean, how could you pass up?
I got 4 years.
It's still 4
I'll
years
be-
away. You'd
yeah.
be 48,
I'll
but
be
I mean, how could you pass up the
Yeah,
time it's finally in the Olympics?
I think if we finally do get into the Olympics and I'm physically fine, if I don't have injuries and I get chosen by the states to surf in that, it'd be a huge honor. I think especially at that age, it would be a huge honor, and it'd be a great way for me to say, you know, I was in that first one, or I was part of that first one when they. I don't think it would be an official sport. I think it'd be like a display sport or whatever, but it'd be a fun thing to do.
The single most satisfying moment from your career to date would be what?
Gosh, it would be single most satisfying would be when I won my sixth world title in '98. For sure, that was because it shouldn't have happened. It was like, I don't know, the stars aligned, and somehow everything came together perfectly, both personally and emotionally and physically and competitively. Everything just aligned for me on this one day, and it was probably the most rewarding day in my life on a lot of levels. If it was just a competition, it wouldn't mean so much, but there's a lot of stuff going on personally for me too that was amazing and wonderful, and so that would all have to be a part of that. But yeah, competitively, that was the peak of it all for me in a lot of ways.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.